What is going on, everybody, and welcome to episode number 28 of the podcast. I am joined by one of my good friends over here. His name is Matt. He was on the House of Wax episode with me and Being Scared, and that was his official podcast debut. So this is your sequel appearance. So I hope you're ready to have a good time, Matt. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited and looking forward to this.
And I know that behind the scenes you invested in a new microphone, so I'm excited to hear you be on that thing, dude.
Yeah. How does it sound?
It sounds good to me. Sounds all good. I like it. So, yeah, dude. So I'm on vacation. I'm enjoying my life. I am ready to do this podcast, and I was very happy that the movie that you suggested that we were going to watch was available for me on Netflix because I didn't want to have to pay any money to rent it. And I was kind of like, oh, man, I don't want to spend the money. You know, it's probably only a few bucks to rent, but still I didn't want to spend the money. And you told me, you're like, no, dude, it's on Netflix, free. Yes. All right, cool. So let's do this. So I watched it today. And to be honest with you, man, this is the first time I've ever seen this movie. It was today.
That's kind of surprising. I've seen this movie many times. I could watch it many more.
Yeah, this was one of those movies that I've always wanted to watch. And I was telling my wife this today when we were watching it. I was like, I'm so excited to see this. And she's like, why? And I was like, well, because I've never seen it. She's like, are you serious? You've never seen it? And I'm like, yeah, no, I've never seen it. I've always intended to. I've always wanted to. And I've always, like, had an opportunity. And whenever it arose, I was like, I want to watch something else right now. I'll come back to this. And for years, I just kept putting it off. And so finally, I sat down and watched it. And yeah, dude, so I'm interested to talk to somebody who really likes it versus somebody who just saw it for the first time, which is me. So The Silence of the Lambs is the movie that we're doing for this one. It came out in 1991. Rotten Tomatoes gave this one a 96%, which is pretty fresh. And then an IMDb score of 8.6 out of 10, which is also fairly high. Seems like a lot of people really like this movie. The budget for this one was $19 million, and in the box office, it made $272.7 million. So I would say that they made a little bit of money off this movie. Not a lot, but just a tiny little bit of money, right? So this movie was written by Ted Talley, who did the screenplay. And then also, I guess there was a novel before this movie that was written by Thomas Harris. Did you know that there was a novel, and have you read it?
I did know there was a novel. I have never read it, although it's on my shelf. Meaning, what I want to read. It's not actually physically on my shelf.
You don't literally own it.
I don't own it yet.
Oh, but you will. But you will one day. This movie was directed by Jonathan Demme, who directed Philadelphia from 1993. I guess that has Tom Hanks in it. And then a movie called Rachel Getting Married from 2008. Have you seen Philadelphia or Rachel Getting Married?
No.
Do you intend to?
No.
I don't either. I was like, okay, so at first when I was looking up my research for this and who directed it and what else they directed, I saw Philadelphia and I was like, that has Tom Hanks. It also has another famous actor. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was like, well, if he's worked with that guy, then he probably knows what he's doing. He's probably a pretty good director. And after watching this movie, I can definitely confirm that, like, this guy definitely knows how to make a really good movie because he did a pretty good job. So the plot of this movie goes, a young FBI cadet must receive the help of an incarcerated and manipulative cannibal killer to help catch another serial killer, a madman who skins his victims. This movie stars Jodie Foster as Clarice Starling, Anthony Hopkins as Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Ted Levine as James Gumb, whatever, I don't know how to say it, James Gumb. And I got to know, man, what are your thoughts about this movie, spoiler free? Like, why did you suggest this one? You sound like you like it because you said you're going to want to watch it a few times over and over again. So I want to know, man, like, spoiler free, what's the deal? Why do you like it so much?
I think for its time, very good psychological thriller. It wasn't necessarily a horror genre. However, it's definitely psychological. And there's some definite scary parts, as in, if I met someone like that, yeah, I would definitely probably run headfirst into a wall. I think the acting is good. And I just honestly, I just like the story. It's really well written. There's a lot of we can get more into it later, obviously, but there's a lot of not behind the scenes, but there's a lot of hints, a lot of uh, uh, I'll just say hints that are said throughout the movie that if you haven't watched it a few times, matter of fact, today I just caught something that I've never heard before, and it clicked in my head. I was just like, wow, that was good. That was good.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you liked it so much. And it's kind of hard for me to relate because you're saying like, oh, I've seen it again today, so I caught new things. For me, this movie was entirely brand new,
Hmm.
and so there's nothing I could catch. I just was viewing everything for the first time. And to be honest, dude, I didn't not like this movie. I thought it was good. And my wife asked me when it was over. She goes, "What'd you think?" And I was like, "Well, here's the thing: is that I liked it. It was good. The acting was great. The suspense was built. It delivered what I wanted to see. Yet it just, I guess, in a way, it didn't necessarily blow me out of the water. And I think it probably has something to do with the fact that this movie is like 29 years old. And I didn't see it back then. So I didn't grow up loving it, you know, and I didn't have that super relationship with this the way other people do. And I just can't put my finger on it why I didn't just full on love it, but I definitely liked it. And with that being said, I have some more things I want to say, but I want to get into our rating. And so for you and for the listeners, if you're not familiar with our rating system, take a listen to this.
The rating system goes from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst movie you've ever seen, 5 being completely average, not good nor bad, and 10 being a nearly perfect movie.
Okay, so that's the rating system. So 1 through 10, man, what would you rate this movie?
1 through 10, one being absolutely terrible, 10 being the best. I'm gonna rate this one at a solid 9 for me.
Wow, that's a really high score. Do you care to just elaborate a little bit on why it's such a high score?
Yeah, definitely. So I would agree in the fact that there's some things about it that are odd or hard to stomach or put your finger on. I think what it is there are a lot of parts where there it feels really campy when it comes to the male characters. And we can get into that more later. But I think because again, like I was saying earlier, the psychological part of it, the total mind ninja that it does to your brain. There's so many things throughout the movie, you know. And again, I was watching it many. I'm still catching things that I haven't caught before. I like the acting. I like Jodie Foster. I like Anthony Hopkins. The story, just dude, is it's amazing to me. That's honestly all I can say. It's just a really good film for me.
Wow, I mean, I completely agree, dude. And it was good, and I totally, honestly, I totally agree with everything you just said about the movie. It's just for some reason I still can't give it that high of a score, but I'm not gonna knock this movie. And with 5 being completely just run in the mill, average, nothing really good or bad about it, and then 10 being like, wow, this movie was tremendous. I'm gonna have to give this one a 6.5, and I'm not giving it a 6.5 because I didn't like it or because I had problems with the movie. It's just if I had to go off of the emotion that I felt once the movie wrapped up and was over, I felt satisfied, yet I didn't feel underwhelmed. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I just kind of felt whelmed. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it
Yeah,
was it was good. You know, like it was, yeah, it was a good movie. It was good. Like that's kind of like what I felt. But there was nothing really about it where I was like, dude, that was so crazy, or like, oh my god, you remember this part? And like, it just didn't blow me away. And it's just really hard to say that because I did enjoy it. But I think 6.5 is like really honestly all I can give this one. Maybe if I did grow up watching it and having like that nostalgic love for it, maybe I could give it a 9 like you did. But just for me, it's just a little above average. It's not crazy good, but it's not bad by any means. But I do think that it was really good for its time. It being a 1991 movie, had real potential to be dated, and I felt like there was nothing about this movie that felt dated, except for the fact that if it was a current movie, you would have cell phones, so there would be some better communication between some of the police officers and the cadets. But other than that, it was good for its time. The acting was great. Left me with an uneasy feeling. Great tension especially between Hannibal Lecter and Clarice. It was intriguing, and the antagonists, Buffalo Bill and Hannibal, were both really, really great, and they were cast perfectly. But it was also kind of slow too. Like, there wasn't a lot that happened. It's a whole lot of like investigating and finding things out. And even though it was still good, it's still kind of, for me, a little bit dragged on in the same way that the movie Jaws kind of drags on. And I feel like you and I probably can both agree that Jaws is an instant classic that's amazing. But to be honest,
Absolutely.
if you watch it today, there are moments where it is kind of slow, and you want to get to the shark. You want to see some shark attacks, and the shark attacks in that movie are kind of minimal. And I kind of felt the same thing for this movie. Like, I felt like Hannibal Lecter is a cannibal, and he is a super bad murderer. Ah, god dang it, freaking A, get down. Ah, got a new kitten. Holy crap, bro. He's been like scratching my back, and then it's like he dove off of my
White one?
computer shit. No, I got another new one. I have 3 cats now.
I saw one of them running around earlier.
Yeah, I got 2 orange ones and a white one now. They're awesome. But yeah, I kind of felt like you have such a great antagonist when it comes to Hannibal Lecter. He's so great, in fact, that he is one of the iconic, horror icons. You have your Scream Ghostface. You have Texas Chainsaw Massacre Leatherface. You have Michael Myers. You have Jason. You have Chucky. You have Leprechaun. You have all these iconic guys, and then Hannibal Lecter slides right in there, and he fits up there with Pennywise and all of them. Yet I felt like he wasn't that involved in the movie, and I felt like it was a shame. Like, there was one moment where you really got to see his true cannibalism and weirdness, but other than that, it was just more of him just being kind of psychologically intense, which I liked as well, but I still wanted more from the character of Hannibal Lecter, and I felt like you got way more from the character of Buffalo Bill, which I'm not complaining about. At the end of the movie, I just felt like a little bit like I wanted more. I wanted more Hannibal, which, I mean, I know they made a sequel, so I guess I could watch that if I wanted more. But as far as this movie goes, then I was a little bit disappointed with the minus lack of Mr. Lecter himself. But now I want to move into our scare rating. So this is a new thing since you've been on the show that we're doing, where I'm going to give you basically like 3 ways you can rate your scare rating, and you're going to pick one of those 3, or if it falls in between one of those 2. So it's going to go from this movie was not scary at all to this movie was kind of scary to this movie is terrifying. So from those 3 options, does it land on one of those, or does it land in between some of those?
I would say, a great question. I think that this one would fall in between kind of and terrifying, only because this is real life stuff. This stuff happens in real life. People, are serial killers, psychopaths. They do stuff like this, and I think that's the part that's terrifying. That's what I was saying. It's real. It really could mess you up, and if you think about it, and if you're someone who has a daughter, for example, like, this kind of stuff is terrifying. But in the fact of the movie itself, I would say it's in between terrifying and pretty. What was the movie?
Kind of scared, or kind of scary and terrifying.
Yeah, kind of scary. I mean, it's definitely not scary at all. Maybe at the fact that it was, like you said, so old. Yeah, it's kind of like meh. And I've seen it so many times, it's not scary. However, again, with the psychological part of it, it's real life. That's what makes it terrifying. Other than that, no, it's not it status for me. It didn't terrify me. It didn't make me jump out of my skin. But Anthony Hopkins is an amazing actor, to the fact that I totally felt that he was Hannibal Lecter, Hannibal the cannibal. I totally feel like he ate those people, probably in real life. Who knows? I've never seen those actors afterwards, so who knows? But yeah, I would say that's my stance on it.
Okay, so I understand completely, and I kind of expected that answer from you. So expectations were met. Nice. For me, I'm thinking this is more of on the dot of kind of scary. Again, maybe if I watched it as a kid, if I was 8 or 9 years old, it probably would be way more scary. But for me, I guess maybe seeing it now versus seeing it back then, it kind of ruins the ability for it to be really scary. Because if you take, Halloween from 1978, and I'm pretty sure that's the date, 1978. If you take Halloween from the late 70s and you watch it now for the first time, that movie's not really scary. Just to
No.
keep it real, it's kind of intense and it's kind of disturbing, but scary, not so much. Like there's a few little moments. So if I was to rate that movie, I'd give that one a kind of scary as well. And so if you watched it back when it came out, though, you probably would be like, this movie was mega terrifying, for the time, which that's why it's so legendary, because at the time there were no slashers like that. And so I think me seeing this movie for the first time in 2020 versus 91, I kind of got shot in the foot by myself, by not watching it earlier. But I don't think Kind of Scary is a bad rating at all. And I feel like if somebody's trying to get into horror, I feel like this might be a good entry point, maybe a little bit above an entry point. I got to ask you now, man. So what kind of people do you think would like this movie? I started kind of getting into mine where I feel like you're a slightly above beginner horror lover would like this movie. What do you think? Do you agree, or do you feel like a different type of audience might like this as well?
I wouldn't even say just above entry level. I would literally say entry level. This is, again, it doesn't have the scare factor of, even House of Wax like we did last time. That had the jump scares. It's
Yeah.
That's another one that was kind of realistic because there were actual people. There weren't anything supernatural about them. So this one, I would say, honestly, this is not supernatural of any kind. It's not aliens. It's not ghosts. It's not paranormal activity type. And because it's so old and it's not scary, meaning today's standards of scary movies, I would say that anybody could watch this who is, I would say, even 12 and above.
Okay. You think, okay. I would say in today's standards, 12 and above is pretty okay. I feel like the people that would like this movie are people who like psychological thrillers, because I feel like versus, House of Wax that you and I did, like you said, there was jump scares and there was gore and there was, pipes going through people's limbs and heads. That's pretty disturbing. In this movie, there are a few of those gory deaths, but not enough to where I'm like, I don't think somebody with a weak stomach could handle this movie. Like, I think this is a good movie for everybody. And entry level, I think, yeah, you're right. I think you're right, dude. I think I'll change that. I think entry level horror lovers are going to get a kick out of this one if they haven't already seen it. Yeah, bro. So I think that's going to wrap up the spoiler-free section of this. So if you guys stick around for spoilers, we're going to get deep into this movie and we're going to just rip it apart and talk all over it. So if you are not coming back after spoilers or after spoiler-free section, thank you for being here so far. And then everybody else, stay tuned right after this ad. All right, welcome back. We are at the spoiler section now. So, Matt, as being my guest on tonight's show, I got to ask you, dude, who was your favorite character and your least favorite character of Silence of the Lambs?
Well, there was a lot of characters in this movie, so to kind of narrow it down, I would say I have two favorites. Obviously, Clarice Starling, Jodie Foster, and Hannibal Lecter by Anthony Hopkins. Least favorite?
You got to pick one, though. Who is your favorite? You can't
just gotcha. Favorite would be Hannibal. Reason behind that, he's just, his whole backstory, even explained in this movie, because as you said, there's two other movies, Hannibal and then Red Dragon. Matter of fact, there's another one. I forget the name of that one. But in this movie alone, they explain how he came to be Hannibal the Cannibal. His whole backstory, his acting, his just the whole portrayal of everything is just amazing. The way he manipulates everything in this movie is just amazing. Least favorite, that one is hard for me because there's a few, but I would say that my least favorite character in this movie has to be, I would say, I forget his name. It's the Clarice Starling's boss, the one that sends her off to investigate or even talk to Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, I for some reason I didn't write down his name, but I know the character you're talking about. It's like her subordinate, her boss.
Yes.
Okay, I can understand that. He was also kind of like hitting on Clarice a lot too, if we're talking about the same person. he was like hitting on her, and he was like, you staying in town, or are you going to be leaving? Because if you're staying, you could really, you could use a tour guide, and you could have a good
Oh,
time.
no. You're talking about Dr. Frederick Chilton.
That's not her boss?
No, Jack Crawford, the FBI boss, the one that
Oh, okay.
the
Yeah,
one that sends her to that place, is the one that I'm not really caring for.
gotcha.
I liked Frederick Chilton because honestly, that actor is also phenomenal. If we're talking personality wise, he needs to go. But Jack Crawford, I didn't care for him because a lot of times he seemed very, almost as if he wanted to take the credit for her doing all of this. It's honestly, his character is very confusing to me, and that's why I didn't like him.
Yeah, he wanted it seemed like deep down personally he wanted to take the victory claim, like, I'm the one who solved this.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's like he knew that he had to let her have it, you know what I mean? And but I did like him. I honestly, I'm surprised that you thought he was your least favorite, because I didn't hate him. Actually, he wasn't really in the movie enough for me to hate him, in my opinion. But I definitely can understand why you would feel that way. It's just I just didn't think he'd be your least favorite. Because let me get into my favorite and least favorite. So I'm on the same page with you when it comes to favorite. Hannibal, definitely. And then I put in parentheses next to that, I put Clarice was a close second. Because,
Yeah.
dude, I mean, just the beginning of the movie, like the minute you meet Clarice, she's just an awesome FBI cadet, and you're just like, yes, dude, like Jodie Foster, she's a great actress. She's already kicking butt in this movie. Her acting is cool. And so she's definitely like one of my favorites. But then if you really think about it, dude, just Hannibal's persona, the way he talks, the way Anthony Hopkins just portrays that character. It's just so good that he had to slightly come in above Clarice. So I totally agree with you on that one. But my least favorite actually was Catherine Martin, played by Brooke Smith. She's the girl that gets taken captive by Buffalo Bill. And I thought that just that actress wasn't very convincing. And I thought that she was kind of an annoying character, especially towards the end when she has the dog and she's like, Jodie Foster ends up like finding her, and she's like, stay right here.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. And she's like, F you, you B word. And it was like,
Yeah.
What? Like, why are you mad at her? Like, shouldn't you be like, oh my God, thank you so much. Oh, please don't leave me. But why are you like cussing her out? Like, if I was Jodie Foster and I was spiteful, I'd be like, okay, well, let's just pretend I didn't find you. You don't deserve saving. But
Puts the hose back on it.
the lotion in the basket. But she definitely was my least favorite. I didn't really like the actress who played her, and some of the moves that she made, like I said, wasn't really my taste, my cup of tea. So that's going to wrap that up for favorite and least favorite. So let's just like get knuckles deep into this movie, dude, and let's just start exploring. So I really, really wanted to start with the literal start of the movie, where Clarice is in some sort of like training montage out in the woods by herself. And dude, honestly, like, I was super impressed because Jodie Foster did her own stunts as far as I could tell in certain parts. Like, there's one moment where she's running and then she climbs like this rope ladder thing and she does like kind of a front flip thing off of it. And, instantly I was like, stunt double. And then I looked and I was like, wow, that's not a stunt double. That was actually her pulling off those maneuvers. And I was like, bravo. I hate when actors can't do the simplest stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then also,
I thought that was pretty cool. I was, when it started, go ahead.
No. Go for it.
I was going to say when it first started and she was doing that, running at the Langley, Virginia training course, apparently, I thought the same thing. Although it kind of, the music and the way she was running and looking around kind of made me feel like the movie was starting right then and there, that she was being chased and that the movie was going to take a different turn when I watched it when I was younger. But yeah, I liked how she got up to that rope ladder, grabbed it, rolled over the top, and literally just continued running. I would have caught my foot, fallen, and busted my face.
Yeah, I would have too. I'm definitely not like that kind of athletic type of guy. But shortly after that training scene, she gets called into one of her boss's office, and she's told to do this special case on this Hannibal character because he basically like shuts all these policemen down, or not policemen, but detectives who want to go talk to him and everything. He shuts them down. He never gives them information, or he like plays with them. And then they're like, look, your assignment is to try to get info, but if you can't get info, at least just observe him and like write down things that he does. And so she's like, okay. And then eventually you get to meet Hannibal, and you get to see all like the nasty cell prisoners, specifically Miggs, who says,
Migs.
I can smell your cunt. And my wife was like, did he say I can smell your guts? And I was like, no.
Yes.
He said something else. But just I liked that whole build up to actually meeting Hannibal, because she comes into this building, this facility, and she goes down this long hallway where there's all these freakishly weird prisoners, and then you just see this one chair that's sitting in the middle of the hallway facing the cell at the end. And it's like, dude, just like building up, going down that hallway was just intense for me. Like it gave me this uneasy, like, what am I about to experience once she finally encounters this guy? And then she finally turns the corner basically and sees him, and he's just standing there. He's just got this weird smirk on his face, this grin.
Hello, sorry.
Yeah. And I just instantly was just like, oh, he looks like a creep. And
Yeah, that's definitely where he got his fame from.
yeah, it is. And she ends up talking to him, and they kind of talk a little bit. And then like basically after that, she starts to leave because he's not really like giving her what she wants or whatever. And then he like calls her back right after Miggs basically like throws some jizz in her face, which was disgusting. And I felt like they did a good job like making it look real, which was extra gross. But eventually Hannibal calls her back, and he's like, I need you to seek out this old patient of mine. And eventually like that leads her to the storage facility, and she goes inside, and she ends up finding this head that's in a jar. And inside of that head, there's this sphinx moth that's lodged inside of the throat of the head. And basically that head is a connection to Buffalo Bill. And so that's kind of like your first really crazy moment, is seeing the head. So I just want to know from somebody who's a fan of this movie, like, what do you think about that whole scene where she finds the head and everything?
Dude, so you just covered so much stuff that literally happens throughout a lot of the movie, actually, because they don't even know that there's a moth in his throat until they find the first one of the victim that was in the water. Remember, it was the third one found, but it was his first victim, which led all the way back to the town that he's originally from, where the movie ends, right? So going back to that, though, earlier I made a comment about how there is a lot of hints in the movie that you just don't pick up the first time, the second time, the third time. Do you remember how after he said, go meet one of my patients named Moffat? Which later on, when she's talking to her boss, Crawford, she figures out that he's actually using a hint to a storage, because she pulled up the phone book, and that's where she found the what would he say? Check yourself in, and that's a storage. Check yourself in is that storage facility that that he referred to, but she figured that out. Now, he does that a lot in the movie, and that's the thing I was talking about. That's the psychological part, is that if you don't pay attention to what he says and what's happening in the movie, you don't know what's happening.
Right, because he's basically going to give her these hints on how to try to basically like live through the personality of a serial killer. And so like he sends her on basically like these wild goose chase kind of, and he does that through, I wouldn't say there's so much like riddles, but they're definitely not just straightforward clues. Like he's like, I'll give you this much info, but it's up to you to also play detective and figure out what I'm saying too.
Every single time, dude. Every time she talks to him, he gives her something else without actually giving her anything. Like, what does he say? Quid pro quo? He never actually gives her anything, but he helps her in her career because he makes her think and problem solve. Everything that she has to do is a problem, and she figures it out. That's the thing. So I think he really did, like, you know, the whole quid pro quo is that he was going to help her solve and figure out who Buffalo Bill is, which he did, but he does it in such a way that she has to think like a serial killer, like you said, and has to figure all the stuff out. And that is what helps her advance in her career, because in the second movie, it's even more, dude. Like you'll have to watch that one because in the second movie, even though it's played by complete different actress and more, it's the same thing, dude. It's everything is a puzzle with him, but he gives them exactly what they need to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's one reason why I felt like kind of robbed when I was watching this of more time on screen with Anthony Hopkins, because his character was so interesting and so complex,
That,
and I wanted to see more, and unfortunately I didn't get enough. But
okay.
I
Let me
probably
jump in here real quick.
yeah.
Let me jump in here. I'm so sorry, but here's the thing. Let's pay attention to the title of the movie because again, this is the psychological part, and they did this on purpose. The title of the movie is "The Silence of the Lambs," which in a part of the movie we find out is because of a trauma that happened to her as a child that he helped her go through. Right. The second movie is called Hannibal, and Hannibal, that almost that entire movie focuses on him. She's kind of like the Hannibal Lecter of that movie, meaning he's kind of an afterthought with her in this one. She's the main focus. He's just the support character. In the second movie, he's the main character. She's the support character.
And it's played Jodie Foster's not in the second one.
No, it's Julianne Moore. She
Oh
was
yeah.
doing another film at the time, which is why she couldn't do it. But she told the director that they have to find another redhead. And they picked Julianne Moore because honestly, she was the only one at the time besides Julia Roberts who was a redhead in Hollywood, right?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. But basically, this movie being so interesting and that character being so cool, and like I didn't know about that, so I'm actually interested to watch that one. And you and I could probably review that one since we did this one together. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that one. But basically, like, you find this sphinx moth or whatever lodged in the throat of this dead head, and you realize that this certain moth is an Asian moth, so it shouldn't be here. And so that's like one of the already links and clues to eventually finding out who the killer is by having these out of country moths, which is pretty interesting and nasty at the same time. But then I have two notes right here I wanted to kind of combine into one and just talk about it. So first things first, Buffalo Bill kidnaps the senator's daughter, Catherine. And underneath that, I wrote with asterisks next to it, let's talk about Bill, because I feel like he is so much more of a villain in this movie than Anthony Hopkins was. And I felt like he was so interesting because unfortunately with me seeing this movie so much after it coming out, 29 years later, it's like it reminds me of the movie Scary Movie. If you've never seen the movie Scream and then you watch Scary Movie first, then when you eventually do go back and watch Scream, you're like, oh, this was that part from Scary Movie. And it's like, no, this is Scary Movie did that part from Scream. Like it's like the chicken or the egg, which one came first? In this sense, this movie came first, but I was kind of introduced to the Buffalo Bill character from the movie Joe Dirt. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
Yeah, once.
Yeah, but there's a character in there, and they do the whole Buffalo Bill stick, and spill, and so when I watch this one, like everybody knows the famous like it puts the lotion on the skin and then put the lotion in the basket. Like everybody knows that, and so for me, I guess it could have been more impactful. Yet I still liked it, and I really, really loved the guy who played him, Ted Levine or Levine. I just thought he was like the superest, creepiest, freakingest, weirdest guy in the world, and I loved the way he talked. I don't know if that actor actually talks like that or if he was putting on some sort of voice, but whatever he did, I love that he just like talks like this when he talks, and just was so cool, and I loved it. But I want to talk about when he kidnaps the senator's daughter, and I want to talk about how that was such a perfect way to kidnap somebody. So if I ever wanted to kidnap somebody, I know how to do it. You just get you get a love seat, and then you back up your van and you act like you're handicapped and you can't put a couch in your vehicle, and then you get the girl to get in your vehicle, which I thought was like brilliant because I really tried to put myself in Catherine's shoes, because your first reaction when you see a scene like this is, okay, what an idiot. Like, don't ever get in somebody's van, you moron. And that's honestly what I thought at first. And then I kind of stepped back for a second and I was like, well, okay, so if this was me, like, first of all, I'm a guy. I'm not saying that I'm stronger or weaker than a woman, but I am a guy. And if I would have seen somebody who was handicapped or disabled trying to put a couch in a thing, and I asked him like, hey, do you need a hand? And he was like, oh yeah, please, can you help me? Like, I don't feel like I would be completely comfortable getting in that van. But if he was like, can you just hop in and I can push it and stuff, I feel like I have been in those situations where I would find myself in the back of that van. And I kind of feel like I would be somebody who would get kidnapped. Do you feel like you would fall for it, or do you feel like you'd be like, no way, man, I'm not getting in your van?
You know, in today's day and age, I'm just gonna say no. I wouldn't have done it. I mean, there's so many things that went through my mind. You know, and again, I've seen this movie multiple times. So as a kid, when I watched it, I was totally just like, I didn't really get what was happening. And here's why: because she pulls up, she's driving home from shopping apparently. She drives up, and he's sitting in the van with night vision goggles, trying to test them out for later on in the movie, right? So he's
Mhm.
sitting inside the van. He's inside the van. Then all of a sudden she gets out and walks to the door, and all of a sudden he's outside the van. So that, to me right there, I automatically was like, oh, that was bad. Like, that they didn't even try to make that work. um, but then it just kind of shows she's trying to be a good person. She's trying to help this dude who can't get a chair, a love seat in his van because he's got a broken arm. He's got a cast on his arm. He can't pick it up, obviously. So he kind of played on her being hopefully a good person. Maybe he knew who she was. Maybe he didn't, because obviously he's looking for a size 14. But I don't know. I kind of feel like I've helped people put things in the vehicle, never in a creepy van. Ladies, don't ever get near a dark van with no windows. Word of advice.
Here's your PSA
Um,
for the night.
yeah, PSA. But I kind of feel like if I was helping someone get a couch or a love seat or a chair inside a van, I would say no, I wouldn't. I would have them go on the inside to pull it while I push it. But then at the same time, they've only got one hand. They can't really grip the couch. Of course, maybe I might get in there. But I also would make sure that the side door of that van was open before I got in that van all the way into the front. I don't know. That's just me. That's just me. Again, I've seen this movie and it's 2020. I kind of have my suspicions about everything and everyone nowadays.
I mean, if you even remember Oprah from the 90s, I remember specific episodes my mom would have on in the background, and she would be talking about, if a stranger comes up and says, I can't find my dog, can you get in and help me find my dog? Don't get in the van. And to have an Oprah television show and an episode dedicated to teaching you to not get into somebody's vehicle, like it really shows you early 90s where people's mindset was, like I have this story specifically about when I was a kid, and I was probably 10, maybe, no, not 10, I was probably like 6 or so. And I remember, like, if you went to Walmart or Target, they would always have, like, in the middle of the store, they would have whatever feature movie was coming out on VHS. They would have it playing in the middle of the restaurant, or not restaurant, I'm sorry, the store. Do you ever remember something like that happening?
Honestly, no. I can't say that I do remember that.
Okay, well then maybe some listeners might not relate, or maybe they will. But yeah, they would have like just a TV, and it'd be playing the feature movie that's coming out. Like, it was always a Disney movie, so let's say it was like Dumbo. And so what my mom would do is she would take us to that TV, and there would be like a few other kids, and you would literally just like drop your kid off in the middle of the store. And I'm not talking like some sort of playground area with some gates and stuff like that and anybody supervising. You literally just put your children on the ground, and you go and you shop for like 45 minutes, and then you come back when you're done, and we're sitting there watching a movie. Like, in 2020, bro, I can't even turn my back on my child when I'm in the aisle of like a
Yeah.
grocery store. You know what I mean? Because I'm so paranoid that someone's going to do something. But I recently, within the last year, asked my mom about that, because I was like, what in the world were you thinking? And she was like, "No, seriously." And she was like, well, it just was different back then. And I was like, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't. And she goes, no, it was. And she goes, it's just, you could leave your doors open. You could do all this stuff. It's so much worse now than it ever was. And so I kind of feel like maybe nowadays girls and even guys should know better than to get into somebody's van. Yet maybe in 1991, being a size 14 young female, maybe you just felt like you were helping out somebody with a disability, and you didn't think anything of it. I can't really full on tell her that she's like an idiot. I have to just kind of maybe say that she didn't know any better because it was the times. But watching this movie almost 30 years later, it definitely as a parent that you shouldn't be getting into somebody's van.
Well, I mean, even if you pay attention to the way that she's acting, she stands there for like a good 10, 15 seconds watching him before she decides to help him. Even when he asks her to get in, she kind of stands there before she gets in, but she does it anyways because, again, he's, hoping that she's a good person to help him, and obviously she was, and got you good.
Yeah, he totally does. And it's unfortunate. But I really liked that moment where he's like, "Are you a size 14?" And she's like, "What?" And then it's like right there, it's like he basically just let up his
Nails
facade.
her.
Yeah, you are Dunskies, lady. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about the back and forth between Agent Starling and Lecter, basically Hannibal and Clarice. I want to know what you thought about their chemistry on screen, because as far as I'm concerned, I felt like those two worked so well off of each other, and not one moment did I feel like they were acting. I felt like they were the characters that they were. Like, do you agree with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's what I was saying earlier. Is that's why the two of them are my favorite in this movie. Is you can totally tell that she's a cadet who's trying to, number one, make a name for herself, not in the way where she's trying to screw anyone over or do anything wrong. But she's definitely just like anybody at any job. They want to be good at what they do. So she's definitely going to take it. I think obviously she was picked because multiple factors. Multiple times throughout the film, if you pay attention, she is getting eyed by every single dude in this movie. She's short, she's young, she's attractive for the time. And I think that's
that
one
was
thing that is
effed up.
mentioned.
You're like, she was attractive for the time. What, in
Well, no,
2020 she's not attractive?
No, I honestly don't think she's attractive. But the thing is that if you pay attention to there's lots of things that are even said during the movie. Is she mentions that the girl that they find, she's not from around there because she's got 3 piercings in her ear as opposed to just 1. And that's what I'm saying is, for the time where she's from and where again, that's what I was going to get into is the conversation throughout the entire movie with Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling is he is picking apart her childhood and why she is the way that she is. She's very timid, but at the same time, she holds herself in such a way that as soon as she starts feeling the eyes of all of the men around her, like there's so many times she's put in a room with like 7, 8 guys at one time, and she's tiny compared to all of these dudes, and she holds her own. She eyes them, she stares them down, or she gets authoritative with them, and every time, dude, they do what she says. It's amazing to see. That's what I was going to say. Is it's amazing to see how her acting in this movie is it's so good with Anthony Hopkins, because I mean, dude, I could go on for so long about the way that they just interacted, but he, from the very get-go, has her figured out. As soon as she walks up and starts talking to him, remember, she hands him the questionnaire, and he makes a comment about how she was doing so well and she was being kind and courteous and the professionality about everything. And he goes, but then you tried to hand me this. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says basically, you try to hand me this questionnaire. And that was her first undoing, because her boss told her, don't just try to give him the questionnaire. So the funny thing is she doesn't just try to give it to him, but she talks to him a little bit, and then she hands it to him, and she tries to segue in such a cheesy way that even if he wasn't a psychologist, a professional psychologist, would have been like, yeah, that was not a very good segue into that. But dude, throughout the entire movie, he does that. He picks up on little things that she does, because again, that's his job. That's what he is a psychologist. That's why he got away with it for so long, is because he knows the way that people think. I don't think it's ever talked about how he got caught, and I don't even know how he was really caught, besides the fact that he was. I don't know if he meant to be caught or if it was something that he slipped up or what, but dude, it's the dynamic between the two of them was just phenomenal. I loved it, and that's one reason why I love this movie so much.
Yeah, me too. I agree. And their dynamic between the two was just so strong and so believable. But even that questionnaire, dude, like, it was just like you said, it was the first time that she kind of like went against what she naturally would have done. She kind of did what her bosses kind of wanted to push upon him, and because of that, like, I feel like it was kind of a turnoff, not a sexual one, but more of just like an off-putting, like, ugh, you were doing so well, and then you ruined it by giving me this stupid get to know me paperwork. Like, do what you're doing now. Converse with me. Tell me about your past. Tell me who you are, where you came from, why you're the way that you are, and then I will, in trade, give you everything that you want to know. Obviously not just completely giving it straightforward, but I will help you figure out who is who and what is what and all that stuff. And so just
That's how he hooks it.
that's how it hooks, line, and sinkers, man. That's because he's a freaking cannibal murderer. He's got to be smart. And I like that they made his character a psychologist. So if that's what he is, I forgot if they mentioned it or not, but he's a doctor at least. And I like that they made him intelligent, and he wasn't just some sort of like Meg's character where he's like, I just like eating people. I'm weird. Like he actually had some depth to him. And speaking of depth. Speaking of depth, I want to talk about the whole arc when it comes to Jodie Foster's character, because you pretty much said it perfectly. She owns the room whenever she's in it. And usually she's in it with 7, 8, 9 guys at once. And it's intimidating because they're all looking at her up and down with their eyes. They're looking at her like a piece of meat. They're all hitting on her and stuff. But she comes in. She demands respect. She earns the respect. And by the end of the movie, her character arc goes from basically like somewhat of a trainee cadet to given an opportunity that she excels in. And not only that, but she ends up being the one who solves this and saves the day, ultimately being the one who gets the promotion and gets the recognition that she needs.
Yep.
And I just felt like specifically early 90s, no offense women, but the women weren't getting the shine like they should be getting nowadays, and that they do in movies. Nowadays, movies will cast women, like all women casts, to like really show that woman power out there, feminism, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 90s, there's a lot of movies that didn't show that. And to give Jodie Foster this extreme depth and this awesome character arc, I just felt like was so awesome to see. And I really liked that. And I really liked that it wasn't cheesy or campy or corny. It felt real and it felt earned. And that's one thing that I really liked about this movie, was that they did a really good job respecting the people that deserved respect in this movie. Dude, but I feel like it's time we got to talk about one of the biggest death scenes of the movie, which is Hannibal gets like relocated to this, it's like this big open room, but he's in this like animal cage. It looks like a tiger cage kind of, and he's inside of it, and the guards come inside to give him his dinner, and he ends up like picking the handcuffs off of himself. And when the guards let their guard down, that he like handcuffs the wrist, and then he handcuffs one of the cops to the like the cage himself, and he ends up attacking the other officer and basically like biting his face and stuff. He doesn't necessarily like rip his nose off or his lips or anything, and they don't get too gory with it, but you can definitely see that he's like chewing up this guy's mouth. And then right after that, he takes the police baton and he just beats down the other officer to death. And I just loved the blank, hollow satisfaction that he has in his eyes as he's beating and plunging the officer to death and blood is being sprayed all over him. He's not corny or campy where he's laughing and like, ha ha ha, I love this. Like, he's not being weird like that. He's not like Chucky where he's laughing. He's just, you can just tell he's like zoning out, and he is just like the killer that he is in that moment. And really loved it. What did you think of that scene?
Dude, that part I really liked. Also, I really hated it. Reason being is, they've talked about it multiple times in the movie, is that Hannibal Lecter only ever hurts the people that he does not like, the people that have done him wrong. And those two guards, throughout the entire time that they were even in the film, they were nothing but good to him. So I don't like the fact that that's where they went with that, or that maybe that's not what it was in the book. I don't know. But that part bothered me because he would not, I feel Hannibal Lecter would not have done that to them.
I'll have to personally disagree, though.
But again,
Matt, real quick, I gotta disagree with you, bro, because I mean, who am I to disagree with somebody who's seen this a ton of times? This is my first viewing, but what I got out of it was in the beginning when Miggs throws his jizz on top of Clarice. When Hannibal calls her back, he basically says like, that is like not classy, and that's disgusting, and he like despises actions like that. And so I don't feel necessarily that, even though those cops might have been nothing but good to him, that they have immunity from a serial killer. I kind of feel like in this moment, like this, well, it's not just that he attacks them and then like that's it. He attacks them and then he eventually escapes. So I felt like maybe because they were so nice to him and maybe he was nice to them and they kind of like in a sense trusted each other, I felt like that was the easy access for Hannibal to really just get in there, attack them, kill them, and then escape like he wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, that kind of goes to what I was going to say later on if we got into it. He seems to have everything planned. I mean, I was going to say, I mean, saying I don't feel like he would have done that, but then later on, once he's in the ambulance, he obviously kills the EMT and the driver of the ambulance. Not only that, but he kills a tourist. They said a tourist, not just someone who lived there, but a tourist, took all of their money and has disappeared. So obviously, like the thing is he's going to do what he can to get away, in such a smooth way. I feel, you know, like he's one of the ones that really would scare me because he's the one that would get right up on you and cut you in such a way that you bleed out before you even know what's happening. And it's not like you see him coming. It's not like you hear him coming. It's literally he's right there. He cuts you. He's gone, and you're just like, yep, that's life. No, going back to the prison scene though. For those who haven't seen it, but have also maybe who have seen Suicide Squad, kind of in a cage, just like Harley Quinn. You know, like literally they put him in this cage so that way he can't. Everyone can see him from all angles, and he can't do anything without being seen. The way he got out of that though. I mean, do you realize? Do you pay attention to what he used to pick that lock on that on those handcuffs? He used the pin of the Dr. Chilton when Dr. Chilton was in his cell earlier in the movie, and was talking trash to him. He had his golden pin on his bed, and what Hannibal Lecter was using to pick that lock was the backside, the clip side of that pin that you would hook onto over your every pin has it. It's that little clicky part that that's on the pin. So he got that somehow, picked the lock, and as you said, he handcuffed the first police officer, bit the other one in the cheek while the first one was sitting there. I wanted to point something out, though, that I did not notice until today. When the officer is putting the tray on the table, Hannibal says, "Mind the painting." The painting that he had drawn, number one, was a starling with a lamb. So that was just after the conversation of the lamb scene of her childhood and what traumatized her so bad. But when the police officer rolled up all the paintings or the drawings and moved them off to the side, there was a magazine sitting on the table that said Bon Appetit.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, dude, the placement. Like I noticed that today, and it made me laugh so hard. It was like, really? So like you knew something was about to happen because I mean you're giving a cannibal a food book. Yeah, come on. But then, yeah, dude, he beat the crap out of that one with his own baton. He bit the guy in the face and basically just ripped it apart, and then took pepper spray and sprayed him in the face. And then as that guard was crawling away, he picked up that knife and crawled after him. What you don't realize, though, is that later on, apparently in between scenes, he cuts that police officer's face off, puts it over his own, and he acts like, not only that, he changes clothes with that police officer, puts him on top of the elevator so that way he would bleed into the elevator as Hannibal Lecter laid there on the gurney being taken out of the place because he's wearing the face of that police officer that is now on top of the elevator. Like that's what I'm talking about with the psychological part. Like he's creepy.
Yeah, and me being a first-time viewer of this movie, I had seen that like infamous view of the cop being kind of like ripped open and then the flag behind him and stuff, which kind of looks like wings and stuff. Like I had seen that before. But I never seen the movie. And so when they pull basically like the body of Hannibal Lecter, quote unquote Hannibal Lecter, like falls down, I was like, oh, what happened? Did he like get hurt somehow? Or I don't know what happened. And then so that moment when he sits up and he rips the face off of him, I was actually surprised. I was like, holy crap, I didn't expect to see that. And what I thought was going to happen is that because he's like injured, or at least I thought maybe pretending to be injured, that he was going to go in the ambulance along with the police officer. I didn't think that he was actually like he changed clothes and stuff like that. So that was actually a really good little twist and surprise.
Yep.
And so I really appreciated that. I really liked it, and I thought it was good. And then basically, like, he escapes, and then after that, there's like this big hunt to find Buffalo Bill. That's really what this movie is. Is this movie is a big chase. They want to try and find out who Buffalo Bill is, where he is, who are his victims, the connections, all that stuff. And so towards the end of the movie now, where we kind of are, you start to find some things out, and Clarice basically finds out like where to go, because she finds out about this James Gum guy, and she
Yep.
goes over and she finds out that this James Gum or whatever was somebody who like made dresses, and you find out that he is making dresses now out of human skin, and it's
Yep.
effing disgusting. And I thought also the practical effects in this movie were really well done. Like the skin that he was using to sew up and stuff, and the bodysuits, I thought looked really legit and real, and I thought that was disgusting and awesome. And then I also want to talk about the big scene, which I was familiar with this scene based off of Jay and Silent Bob, that movie Clerks. I think Clerks 2 or Clerks 3, one of the two,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
Jay sticks his manhood between his legs and he's like, "Would you f me? I would f me." And
Yeah.
that was the first time I had seen that scene, was in Jay and Silent Bob or whatever. And then so seeing this, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what this is from." And then he does it, dude. He puts like his lipstick on and he's like, "Would you f me? I'd f me. I'd f me so hard," you know. And he's just like going for it. And then he puts on this like, obviously you can tell he scalped one of his victims, and he puts that on. He gets naked, he puts jewelry on, he stuffs it between his legs, and he starts just doing this weird shimmy dance type of thing. And
Yeah.
dude, it was a car crash that I could not look away from. It was like, dude, I don't want to look, but like at the same time, it was so visually like disturbing that I was just like, I can't stop looking.
Yeah, dude, that scene's in a couple movies. I don't remember all of them, but that's definitely in Clerks. You kind of alluded to what are not really alluded, but you touched the topic that I wanted to talk about. That I said earlier I wanted to talk about was, remember the hints that Animal keeps saying. So you remember when he actually goes and meets the senator and starts talking to her and everything, and lies to her and gives her the name of Lewis' friend and whatnot. Again, that's something that's Clarice Starling figured out in the lobby to go meet him. But just before that scene ends, Hannibal Lecter tells her, "Nice suit." What the hell is the point of saying that, dude? Besides to find out later on, obviously, that then I think it cuts to a little bit later on to the fact that he's sewing something up, and as you can see, it's obviously skin. Not only that, but then later on, Clarice Starling, when she figured out, based off of another hint of Hannibal's, that remember when she's sitting there with her friend, that other female cadet, and they're talking about the first victim that was found third in the cycle. But based off of what Hannibal had said, when he was talking about coveting something, what do you covet first? You covet something that you can see. So obviously that means that he knew that girl, and so that's how the two of them figured out that it was from that town where she was from. When she went to that house, she noticed that dress inside the inside that closet that had those triangle or those diamond shapes. But that's exactly what that girl, you remember that girl that they found when they were looking at the body and they flipped over onto her stomach and were looking at her back. She had diamond shaped patterns cut into her skin, where her skin was removed because that's the same person. So that's the thing, is that it literally all ties in together. But then she goes to the house. She meets up with Buffalo Bill without knowing that it's him at first. But there's a few things. First and foremost, something else that you don't catch that I caught again today is that every time he is mentioned in giving out his name, it is with a J as the first name, starting with a J, and the last name starts with an M or G. I'm sorry, because remember it's like James Gum, and then James Gum. That's two names that he had given earlier in the movie. When he answers the door, he's like a John Gracie or something like that. John Gracie. Wait, that's
No, when
actually
he
a serial
answers the
killer.
door, he's Jack Gordon.
Yeah, there we go. See, it's another JG. So he always gives the name, and she didn't catch that. But when she finally figured out it was him was when they went into the house, and that moth, that butterfly, lands right next to her, and it's that death head butterfly.
Right, that's right. Yeah, actually, that was the scene, not that scene, but the whole like ending type of
Yeah,
act.
dude.
I wanted to like you started getting into it. So like, let's do it while we're here.
Okay.
So like what you're saying, Clarice ends up finding out where to go, and she ends up calling like her boss and everybody. And she's like, hey, I found
Yeah.
out where to go and stuff. And he's like, we're already on it. We're on our way there right now. And she's like, okay, good. I'll meet you there. And he's like, no. Just kind of like hang back, you know? And what I kind of took out of that was like, stupid woman, you know, like let the men do the heavy lifting. You go back, you know? And like, every time that like she talked with her boss, it kind of felt like she was always somewhat being put down a little bit, you know, not like
Yeah.
so bluntly, but also like, you're a woman and I want you to remember you're a woman. Like I'm gonna let you advance a little bit and I'm gonna let you do this stuff, but at the end of the day, remember who your boss is, a man. And I'm in no way, dude, am I like a feminist type of guy, like where I'm like feminism, like at all. But I definitely don't like when movies play up the whole man versus woman type of thing, unless you get a good payoff like you did in this movie. So I didn't mind it as much at the end. But eventually she goes to go check something out. She goes to this house, and I really, really loved the moment when all of the cops are surrounding the house. And they're surrounding the house and they're ringing the doorbell, and Buffalo Bill is like, what? Who is that? Blah, blah, blah. And like, you can
Yeah.
just like, it's so intense because you're like, oh my God, they're about to encounter him. And then he goes to answer the door and he opens it up and it's Clarice. And you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Like, the cops are at a wrong house, and the cops end up going
Yeah.
inside and realizing nobody's there. And Clarice is actually standing right in front of Buffalo Bill, not fully realizing it. And she
Yeah.
basically asks him a few questions like, do you know the lady that lived here? And he's like, no, she's gone or something. And she's like, oh, dang. Well, do you know how to get a hold of anybody? And he's like, well, you know, I know where her son has a number. Let me fetch it for you. So come on inside. And right there, I was like, oh God, no, like, please don't go inside. And then she goes inside, and as he's trying to locate this business card to give her, she sees all these different, like, not all of these different, but she sees like a different type of moth flying around, and she realizes like, oh my God, this is the place, this is the guy. And so she unholsters her gun pretty much, or unclips it, you know. And then you see from around the corner, Buffalo Bill also has a gun that's on the oven or the stove. And so basically you're like, oh my God, they're about to have this big old shootout. And remember, dude, this is my first time seeing it. So I didn't know
Yeah.
anything coming from it. So for me, I was like, they're about to have a big old shootout. And then you basically realize like that they both realize that they know what they know. And so she pulls the gun out and she's like, freeze. And he takes off like running pretty much. And then eventually she goes downstairs. She finds Catherine down in the hole. And that's where I was alluding to earlier about where she's like, don't leave me, you effing B word. I'm like, okay, that's not the choice words you want to say to somebody trying to save your life, but it is what it is. And then like right after that, the lights go out and you're like, what? Oh God. And then all of a sudden there's those, like you can see the night vision goggles come on. And
Yeah.
I really loved the acting by Jodie Foster in this moment when she's acting terrified and like she can't see anything.
Terrified.
Dude, I love that she would like stick her gun out and you could see just how violently her hand was shaking from being terrified. And I just thought like it was well done. It was great. I will kind of say I have an issue with the fact that he pulls a gun up to shoot her and he basically like cocks the gun, and that was enough for her to turn around and then like kill him, and she doesn't even get shot at once.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I kind of felt like in that moment in real life, he would have cocked the gun and she would have, yes, turned to shoot him, but he still would have had the advantage and popped one in her, being able to see and she can't see. So that part was a little like, you know, but still the suspense was built. The tension was high. I was like, what is going to happen? And I did love the payoff. I didn't really love how it was executed, but I still love the end result. And I really like that. So I want to know, dude, like, what did you think about the whole moment where she ends up talking to him in the house up until that point where she ends up killing him?
Yeah, dude, I agree. The kind of going back to Hannibal real quick, he again gave enough information to get her to the right spot, but her boss somewhere else, 400 miles away. That's the thing, is that's what I was saying earlier, is he intentionally gave enough information to her that she would give to her superiors, and that's why they were on that plane going somewhere completely different. Remember that he pulls up that little drawing of the suspect, and it looks absolutely nothing like Buffalo Bill. which, again, she'd been sitting there at the academy with her friend, found out that it was at that town. I don't know what led her to that house, honestly. Like, that one still confuses me. I still haven't figured that out. I know she was at the girl's house with her dad looking through her stuff, and then figured out that he was someone who was, doing dresses. That's when she got on the phone with her boss. That aside, they went their separate ways, the boss and her. Why she went to that house, I don't know. I have yet to figure that out.
No,
But
I'm pretty sure they said what it was. I can't specifically remember, but there was a part where Jodie Foster was talking to somebody. I think she was talking to like the girl she worked with or something.
her friend.
Yeah,
She was
and then
talking to that girl's friend at that bar or something.
and then she mentions like something, and the bar and that I think the girl that died or something gets brought up or something like that, and she goes, "Do you happen to have?" Like, I think she says, like, "Do you happen to have the address?" Or like, yeah, she goes, "Do you happen to have the address of this lady? I want to talk to her." She asks for the address, so that's how she gets the address.
Okay, so that makes sense then. All right, so then she goes into the house. The guy is kind of creepy, and he at first, obviously he tries to say that they don't live there anymore. Tries to shut the door. She steps in the way to kind of keep it from shutting, and says something else, which then starts talking about the girl. He calls her. He was like, "Yeah, wasn't she that fatty or blah blah blah?" And she goes, "Yeah, she was an oversized or a larger girl." And then he makes a comment about her brother. Didn't she have a brother or something? And he said, I think I have the card of the place where he used to work, which is why they went inside the house. Nothing about the house really seemed crazy, except for the fact that when they went into the kitchen, I didn't even think about this until just now too, but that moth also lands on a bunch of thread spools of different colored threads. So it's like, okay, that makes sense now. He's making dresses, he's sewing, he's doing all these different things. And then the death head moth lands on top of that. So that's when she automatically knew. So then he takes off downstairs. She's terrified, which I would have been too. I don't know if I would have. I mean, if anything, I probably would have called in the cops from the local town. However, I don't know. The thing is, at the time, she didn't even know that that girl was still there and that she was alive. So she goes downstairs. I like the fact that she locked one of the doors where there was all these doors that connected to the rooms where she was in. So she put a chair underneath one of them so it couldn't open. She finds the annoying girl, which I thought the same thing, dude. Like, honestly, it really irritated me that she treated her like that. Like, I get that you're terrified and you want to get the hell out of there. But you're not going to be talking to someone who's there to protect you and help you like that. So that aside, Clarice then goes into another room, gets freaked out by the refrigerator because it makes some noise. And then, as you said, the lights just shut off. Pitch black, you can't see anything. I like the fact, I think the creepy part too was not only was she terrified and moving around, I don't know if it was actually pitch black because she's moving around like it probably is. But at the same time, I don't think they would do that because they wouldn't want her to hurt herself. However, she's very terrified. You can feel it. Like, even yourself, you're thinking to yourself, oh crap, what's going to happen? Like, where's this going to go? But then I think the part that really got me was the fact that he got right up on her. And before he even pulled out that gun, dude, he reaches out to touch her hair. Like, he reaches out. You see her reaching out to touch, like, if there's anything in front of her. And then all of a sudden you see his hand and he reaches out to touch her hair and then pulls it back last second. And she turns and then his face reaches out then his hand reaches out for her face. And then she turns around and that's when he pulls out the gun, which I thought the same thing. It's a big old 44 Magnum, dude. That thing is heavy as hell. You got to pull back that hammer. It's going to make a lot of noise. And then in that time, she turns around and unloads 6 rounds from her revolver in the time that he does what? Get shot 6 times and dies. It's just, that part to me was so anticlimactic. It really annoyed me that the movie went all of that just for that to happen. Like, he didn't even get shots off. He didn't even graze her or nick her or anything. All he would have had to have done was pulled that trigger so lightly because of the fact that he'd already pulled back that hammer and it never even happened. So I think that whole scene with Catherine and with Buffalo Bill, like, that part really annoyed me about the movie. Always has. But overall, I like what they did because it literally, everything builds up to right there at that one moment in this house, it's make or break, it's life or death for someone or all of them, and you never know. I don't know if they plan on making a second movie because the second movie took a long time to make after this, but literally you don't know what's going to happen because of, hopefully the director wouldn't have taken that much, creative liberty to change the story of the book. But I liked it. I mean, again, I really liked this movie because of all of the psychological and all of the hints and all of the fact that Hannibal Lecter has manipulated every single person in this movie to do exactly what he wants in such a smooth, deceitful, ingenious way. Not only that though, but he helps Clarice because she's the reason why he likes her is because from the very get-go she says, I'm just a cadet. I don't know why I was sent, but I'm going to do my job and I'm going to do it hopefully with your help. And I think that's why he really took to her, was because she's upfront and she's being honest with him. And a lot of the times those other psychologists or detectives or whoever else probably weren't that friendly to him. Obviously I don't think I would have been. So
Yeah, I totally agree, dude. And I do kind of agree also where you said that the whole shootout scene was a little anticlimactic, and it was. And I've recently got a subscription to Shudder, which is like a Netflix for horror movies. And
yeah,
on there, they had Prom Night from 1980, and I had never seen it before. And so I started watching it, and I'm only about halfway through, and I just cannot stand how bad it is. And I know that movie came out 11 years before this one did, but there's a moment where one of the girls gets her throat cut, and it is so bad and so anticlimactic, and the acting is so cringy that it was like, honestly, it took me out of the movie because it was so bad. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but in this one, like, I'm not saying this was bad or anything. It just more so was, like you said, anticlimactic. Like they could have done it a little bit more realistically. Maybe they could have had some gunfire from across the room, but don't have basically like the magnum up against her head and already drawn. You know what I mean? Like, because it just seemed very unrealistic that she would be able to full on do a 180 turn with her body and pull her gun up and shoot exactly where he was that many times and kill him. But still,
Well, I mean, I get that she would have known that he was right behind because of the pull of the hammer, the click that it makes, and maybe because the 44 Magnum is incredibly heavy compared to the 357 that she probably had, or even the 38. But the thing is that once you pull back that hammer, dude, it does not take that much pull on a trigger. So I think that's the part that annoyed me the most. Is I get that she probably turned around because of all the training she has and opened fire and just completely emptied the gun. But he would have gotten some kind of fire off, dude. Whether or not it hit her, he would have at least fired a round. But I don't know. That really annoyed me.
that's also kind of what I was saying, that she was able to turn around, pop, 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 and he didn't even get like one to the shoulder, like got her in the shoulder or something, something to kind of like whip her back. But ultimately, she ended up winning. Like, they didn't really. Dude, my daughter's back there making so much noise. She has a cat toy and it has a giant stick, and she basically like broke it in half, like untwisted it, and now she's just
Oh
going
yeah,
around
yeah.
and basically smacking everything. And I'm like, yeah, like
Dude,
daddy's.
my daughter
Yeah.
did that to my cats. My daughter did that to my cat, and she chased him around the house, hitting him with it.
You gotta love little kids, man. They're just the best, right? But so basically, like we're saying, Clarice ends up getting some shots off. She ends up killing Buffalo Bill, saves the day, saves Catherine, and then at the end of the movie, Clarice finally gets that recognition that she earned and deserves, and everybody's
Yeah,
basically throwing like some sort of like party for her, like, yeah, good job. And I just thought that was really cool, and she seems confident and a new her, which I liked. And at the party, she gets a phone call, and they're like, phone call for you. And so basically her boss tells her like, yeah, this kind of thing's not for me, but I'm still here. I just wanted to say thank you, and you did a great job, and you're awesome. We couldn't have done it without you. And then he ends up leaving, and she goes and takes the phone call, and it's Hannibal, and he's calling her from wherever she is. And he basically like lets her know, like, hey, I'm not going to pursue you, don't pursue me, we're not going to try and find each other, just let it go from here. And then he ends up being like, I gotta go, I'm having dinner with an old friend, or I'm having an old friend for dinner.
yeah.
And you know what that means. Like, he's going to eat somebody because he's free, basically. Like, he escaped, he did his thing. Like, don't search for me, I won't mess with you, and I'm about to go eat somebody. And pretty much that just like wraps the movie up. And like I said, dude, I gave this one a 6.5, but as we've been talking about it, I can't necessarily bump the score quite yet, but I do feel that if I was to throw this movie on again, just to kind of see the things that I missed, or to kind of watch it with the eyes after you have told me certain things about it,
Yeah,
I feel like it's very possible that I could shoot this one up a full number point to a 7.5.
dude, I'm happy with your score. I mean, honestly, that's why people have different opinions, even though yours is wrong. But I mean, honestly, no. Here's the thing. I mean, I can see. I really can. I mean, if you'd have watched this movie as a kid, and then watched it as many times as I have, I've probably seen it a good 6 or 7 times. And I'll probably watch it maybe once every, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 years. But again, every time I watch it, there's something new that I'm catching, and I'm just like, dude, how did I not freaking see that? Like today, I saw 4 different things that I've never seen before, and I'm like, how did I not see those things, dude? Like, how did I just not see those? They're plain as day, but because I've watched it and I know about serial killers and stuff like that, not like a lot of people that I know about serial killers, but it's just, this movie to me is amazing. I can respect your score, I really can. And I'm not going to argue it, dude. Your opinion is your opinion, and it's a good one in this case. I agree. I would say you definitely should watch it again. Maybe we could watch it again together so I can point out things. But one thing I did want to point out was when you mentioned just now that he got off the phone and said he's having an old friend for dinner. Did you see who that old friend was?
No.
No, it was Dr. Chilton. The dude who was such a to him inside that the first ward he was at, he was hauling ass and getting away because Hannibal Lecter had escaped. He was running for his life, and he went down Tatey to get away from Hannibal Lecter, and Hannibal Lecter was there and knew it. And he was like, guess what? I'm having an old friend for dinner. And at the end of the movie, you see him following Dr. Chilton and his escort.
Oh, okay. Because I saw that he says I'm having an old friend for dinner, and then I saw that there was a group of people. Maybe it's because I'm not familiar enough with the characters that I was like, I don't know who you're talking about. I just figured it was
that's the
somebody.
thing. They kind of misled you because as he's saying that, you see these people, these white people getting off the plane and meeting these, native Haitians who are welcoming them and being, friendly and whatnot. But then you see this dude, this bigger, kind of not so incognito, almost military looking dude walk up. And then he says, I'm having an old friend for dinner. He hangs up the phone. You see Clarice saying, Dr. Hannibal. She says it like 4 or 5 times, which is another thing that annoyed me. But then the next shot is that military dude that came walking up to the plane is now walking away super fast with this panicked white guy who keeps looking over his shoulder. And then he turns back towards the Haitian dude, and you can totally see it's Dr. Chilton. He's not in his suit and tie. Now he's in like a Tommy Bahama shirt. But if you look at it, it's totally him. It's obvious it's him. But I don't think that you're expecting that because Hannibal Lecter doesn't really allude to anything else besides he's having an old friend for dinner.
Oh, okay. Well, see, there we go. Like, that's another thing that I would want to look at when I'm watching it for a second viewing. Because at first it wasn't as obvious to me as it probably will be seeing it again. But yeah, dude, I felt satisfied, and it was over. Credits roll. I was like, this is a pretty cool movie. I liked it. I'm glad I finally got to see it, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. I don't know when that time will be, but yeah, dude, I'm definitely down to watch it with you, and or maybe get our wives together or something, have a movie night. I don't know, but yeah, dude, it was cool. I'm glad you picked it. Thank you for picking it. And next time I have you on the show, I'll have to make you watch something that you haven't seen before. But yeah, man, so I think that's going to wrap this one up. And I appreciate you coming on the show, dude. And I hope I can definitely tell that you felt a lot more comfortable with doing this episode than the last one, and it shows. Yeah. So I think you did a really good job, man, and I'm excited to have you on more often. And yeah, dude, that's going to wrap this one up. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Matt, again, thank you for being on, and I will catch you guys on the next one.